it's gonna be the construction of the throne, the Iron Throne.
With most of the south in Aegon's hands, the best chance to throw back the Conqueror now lay with the north, if we cared enough to try. Unlike our southern rivals, the Stark Kings of Winter didn't forge the north into one kingdom for glory or gold. There is little of either here, but to survive. Alone in Westeros, the north remembered when worse than dragons lay waste to armies. Thousands of years ago, the sun set on the realms of men and the long night began. A new race emerged from the ice and snow, the White Walkers. They demanded no crown, offered no terms, spared no life, and the dead marched with them. With humanity facing extinction, a Stark sought out the children of the forest, the most ancient beings in Westeros, and convinced them to ally with the men they'd once fought. Together, the two races pushed the Walkers back into the land of always winter and sealed it off from the Seven Kingdoms with the Wall. 300 miles of ice, stone, and earth, rising nearly 700 feet tall. To guard it, they established the Night's Watch, a brotherhood sworn to defend the living from the dead, whose vows erased both titles and crimes.
After the long night, the North tried to forget it belonged to a continent. Perhaps through pride, perhaps through sheer ignorance. You never can tell with the North. But as news of Aegon's dragons spread, Torrhen Stark, the King of Winter, knew he couldn't forget Westeros any longer, and summoned his lords to Winterfell. Many fools shrugged off the threat, while the rest placed wagers on how long the South would take to burn. Torrhen silenced them with a command to assemble their armies and descend from the north in force.
As the kings of the Rock and the Reach burned on the field of fire, the greatest northern force since the Long Night crossed the neck into the Riverlands. But when King Torrhen arrived at the Trident, he saw, on the opposing riverbank, the combined strength of all Aegon's conquered kingdoms.
Damn.
A force larger than Torrhen's own by half, and with 3 dragons.
That night, King Torrhen called a conference of all his lords and advisors. Some wanted to fight and trust northern valor to carry the day and burn on the Trident. The wisest of them wanted to withdraw to Moat Cailin, the fortress which had thrown back every southern invasion, and burn there. One suicidal lord even wanted to ambush Aegon's camp in the dark and kill the dragons as they slept, or at the very least, their riders. It's hard to tell what would have been his fate. Burning, beheading, dismemberment, perhaps all 3.
My ancestor listened to their counsel, and in the morning crossed the Trident under a flag of parley. Then King Torrhen of House Stark laid his ancient crown at Aegon's feet and was named Lord of Winterfell and Warden of the North.
And the king who knelt.
He had no choice, and thanks to him, our soldiers returned to their homes whole and unharmed. The swords that Aegon took from them were not twisted, burnt, or mangled.
Yet.
Damn, and it's also crazy how that flips, right? So when it came to the Long Night, the North was the first one that, well, they was the only one to, well, actually, anytime, both of the times, there was the only one to get the brunt of it. This should be around the time when the Long Night drops, or at least is going to drop. I don't know, but then when it came to Aegon, the North was the last one. So it's like they could kind of assess things just like how the Southern Kingdoms can assess things. I sighed because I was about to say someone's name and I don't want to say their name right now, but yeah. I was about to drink my tea like I still have some in there, dude.
Old and proud, House Arryn did what they always did in times of strife. They shut the bloody gate, sealing off the Vale. Then the Queen Regent Shae of House Arryn retreated with her son, the boy King Ronald, into the Eyrie, their family's impregnable fortress. From the top of their mountain they could look down on Westeros far below, its problems hidden beneath the clouds. But one day, Queen Shae entered the outer courtyard to find her young son sitting on the knee of Visenya Targaryen and ogling her dragon Vhagar beside her. Just as he'd asked for another cake at dinner, little King Ronald asked his mother if he could go flying on the nice lady's dragon. Visenya smiled at Shae. So, Shae imagined, did Vhagar. Remembering her manners, Shae asked if she could have Visenya brought some wine or food. She must be tired after such a long flight. But Visenya demurred. Bored with his mother's pleasantries, Ronald demanded an answer. Poor boy. He didn't even understand the
Exactly.
question. Shae hesitated for a moment, then asked Visenya, as a mother, if it was safe for the boy. Visenya assured her it was. What choice did Shae have? Whilst her son circled the castle, she collected his little ringlet, her own regent's coronet, and the ancient falcon crown of mountain and vale which the Arryns had worn for thousands of years. Ronald had taken to the sky as a king, but he landed as a lordling. Perhaps he considered his ancient rights a fair trade for a few minutes of flight, as a little boy would. More likely, he didn't even notice the 3 crowns at Visenya's feet, or recognize the swords of his garrison beside them.
You kind of got it easy, man. Man's got a
The heads of Westeros had bowed to Aegon, but its heart
no bodies
still
and
beat free.
he got a free
The
ride.
center of the faith of the Seven. There dwelt the High Septon, the father of the faithful, who commanded the obedience of all Westeros, save the savages of the north and their old gods. When Aegon had landed in Westeros, the High Septon had locked himself in the Starry Sept and fasted for 7 days and 7 nights, one for each of his gods. All he received for his trouble was the divine wisdom that if Old Town took up arms against the dragon, the city would burn, faithful and faithless alike. After the submission of House Stark, Aegon marched towards Old Town, steeling himself for another battle. But he found the gates open, with the High Septon welcoming him. The pious fool even had the arrogance to grant what Aegon had already won, and anointed the last Valyrian as Aegon of House Targaryen, first of his name, King of the Andals and the First Men, Lord of the 7 Kingdoms, and Protector of the Realm. As if titles meant anything to a man before whom time itself now bowed. The Maesters would hence divide all history into before and after Conquest. Most expected Aegon to stay and make Old Town his seat. But soon after his coronation, Aegon returned to the mouth of the Blackwater River, where he had first set foot on Westeros. A small town had since sprouted around his primitive fort. To honor their new master, the locals dubbed it King's Landing, though it looked more fit for a hedge knight, with wooden palisades, muddy streets, and piles of mangled swords carted in from every corner of the Conquest. But when Aegon made it his court, wood became stone, black mud was buried beneath a red keep, and the collected swords of Aegon's foes were blasted by dragonfire and became a seat fit for the conqueror and the greatest dynasty this world has ever known. House Targaryen, my family, my throne. Or so it should have been.
No, sir.
But while Aegon titled himself Lord of the 7 Kingdoms, in reality he held only 6. The 7th, Dorne, had never knelt. Visenya had flown into the Vale and returned with its crown. Mimicking her sister, Rhaenys had flown over the enemy force holding the passes into Dorne and landed in the castle of its ruling lady, Princess Meria of House Martell. Meria was 80 years old, fat, bald, and blind. Behind her back, many sniggered at her as the yellow toad of Dorne. The beautiful Rhaenys probably thought as much when they met. She demanded Princess Meria kneel to her brother Aegon, though she allowed that on account of Meria's age and health, a simple vow of submission would do. But the princess told the queen that the Targaryens weren't wanted in Dorne, and no Martell would ever bow, bend, or break, no matter how badly they burned. Rhaenys could have mounted her dragon right then and roasted Meria in the castle as her brother had done at Harrenhal. But whatever she saw in Meria's eyes scared her right back to King's Landing, with a dragon's tail between its legs. After Aegon's coronation, Rhaenys returned to Dorne with Aegon and Visenya, and their dragons. But no armies met them in the field, and no lords defied them in their castles. As the dragons approached, Dorne simply emptied. House Martell had learned from Harrenhal and the Field of Fire. The dragons were unbeatable in battle, but wars were more than battles. Unopposed, Aegon claimed Dorne for his own, but as soon as he returned to King's Landing, his castellans were hurled off towers, and his royal garrison vanished in the
Okay, I'm like,
seen again. Except perhaps when the winds change and the sands cough up old bones and armor. Rhaenys returned on Meraxes, intent on revenging herself against Meria Martell. But Dorne was no longer empty. The Dornish kept Meria's promise and fought even while burning under dragon flame. And they won. One day a bolt pierced the eye of Meraxes and knocked the dragon out of the sky. House Martell remained unbroken, unlike the unfortunate Rhaenys. In their wrath, Aegon and Visenya set flame to every castle and city but Sunspear, trying to turn the people against House Martell. But the Dornish stayed loyal, and when Aegon returned to King's Landing, he found assassins waiting for him in the streets of his own capital. If not for Visenya, the Conqueror would not have enjoyed his conquest for very long. From then on, the king and his family would be guarded by the 7 greatest knights in the realm, the King's Guard. When Meria died in her sleep, her weak and tired son sued for peace. But old Meria had exhausted Aegon as well, and he granted the request. The Targaryens still wanted Dorne, and eventually they would have it, but not at the point of a sword. They would buy it the same way great lords buy anything, with a daughter.
bro, what? Okay, yeah, this one kind of tweaking, dude. I got the whole Avengers lineup, like.
After the conquest, when men looked up, they saw dragons. Nobles learned to keep their eyes down, but the gods weren't used to sharing the heavens. When Aegon died, the High Septon led the Faith and its army in revolt, claiming that the Valyrian tradition of wedding brother to sister was an abomination in the eyes of the Seven, though no one could explain where the divine mother and father had come from. My ancestor Maegor the Wise, or Maegor the Cruel as men slander him, put a bounty on the head of every militant priest, and miraculously, the Faith soon returned to the sects. With Dorne in the fold and the Faith put in its place, none in Westeros were left to oppose my family, so we started opposing each other. In the Dance of Dragons, a Targaryen princess tried to steal her brother's throne. Thanks to her stupidity, most of our dragons died, though one, thankfully, ate her before it did. But even without our dragons, we were still the blood of old Valyria, which proved just as dangerous. One of my foolish ancestors didn't see what separated his bastards from our family proper, and legitimized them all on his deathbed. Adopting the name Blackfire, the bastards proved their nature and tried to seize their father's kingdom. And when they failed, their sons tried. When the sons failed, their grandsons tried, until finally Sir Barristan the Bold, Knight of the King's Guard, slew Meleys the Monstrous in the War of the Ninepenny Kings, ending the last of the Blackfire line. Ultimately, without our dragons and with our blood diluted by commoners, we failed to see the greatest threat growing under our noses.
As the saying goes, every time a Targaryen is born, the gods flip a coin.
Mm-hmm.
They must have dropped the one for King Aerys, for at first he seemed to have dodged the family madness. But as he grew older, he began to see conspirators everywhere, and where there were none, he worked to create them. As one of his Kingsguard, I saw firsthand that a king who couldn't rule his own mind couldn't rule 7 kingdoms. We endured his reign because we hoped his son Rhaegar would right the realm when he ascended to the throne. But then, Rhaegar proved as mad as his father and snatched Lyanna Stark, daughter of the Warden of the North and betrothed to Robert Baratheon, Lord of the Stormlands. When Lyanna's father and eldest brother demanded justice, the Mad King obliged, laughing as he dispensed it.
Unsatisfied with only 2 murders, the Mad King then ordered Jon Arryn, Lord of the Vale, to execute his 2 wards, Robert Baratheon and Eddard Stark. Instead, Jon Arryn raised the Vale in revolt, Ned Stark slipped past royalist sentries and raised the north, and Robert won 3 battles in a single day to unite the Stormlands behind him, only to be defeated by a royalist army and forced to flee, leaving his home of Storm's End besieged.
The Hand of the King finally cornered Robert in the town of the Stony Sept and sent his soldiers door to door searching for the rebel leader. But the villagers hated the Mad King and loved Robert, and kept him one step ahead of the soldiers, until only one refuge remained. As the soldiers closed in, all the town bells rang out. Hearing of Robert's plight, our father and Jon Arryn had rushed to the Riverlands and enlisted our grandfather Hoster Tully to help them. Together they routed the Hand's army and rescued Robert. To celebrate and cement the Tully alliance, our father wed our mother Catelyn, and Jon Arryn took our aunt Lysa. Only a fortnight later, both men rushed back into the field, for the dragon had finally woken.
While my father's servants were losing my father's kingdoms, my brother Rhaegar had been cooped up with his mistress, whore, whatever else, I'd call her a distraction. But now Rhaegar came to his senses and returned to King's Landing. He persuaded our father to summon his estranged friend, Lord Tywin Lannister, the richest and most powerful lord in the realm. Rhaegar himself would lead the royal army against the usurper, Robert. On the banks of the Trident, my brother fought the man whose wife he'd stolen, and who fought to steal his birthright in return. In the end, Robert wanted it more. His hammer shattered my brother's armor, and its rubies fell into the river like raindrops, vanishing in the current.
I wonder, well, unless he knew and it was denial, but I don't think that's the case. I wonder what Robert, his reaction if he found out that, they got married.
With Rhaegar,
And it wasn't a kidnapping.
in King's Landing. Imagine the king's surprise a fortnight later when he saw not stags, but lions outside his gates. His former hand, Tywin Lannister, had come to the capital with a force even Robert couldn't match, claiming to be loyal to the king. Trusting what he wanted to believe, Aerys ordered the gates opened, and the Lannister forces dutifully began to rape, pillage, and murder the king's actual loyal subjects. When Eddard Stark finally arrived at the capital with Robert's army, he found Lannister banners hanging over the sacked city, Targaryen corpses littering its streets, and Sir Jaime Lannister sitting on the Iron Throne. Below him, the Mad King Aerys, whom Sir Jaime had sworn to guard, lay in a pool of his own blood from a sword thrust through his back. Lord Eddard might have thanked Sir Jaime for doing the realm a favor, but honorable as he was, Lord Eddard condemned Sir Jaime as a kingslayer, a name he would never escape.
Unlike Lord Eddard, Robert appreciated my contribution to his glorious victory. He pardoned me for my crime and even kept me on his Kingsguard beside Sir Barristan Selmy, who'd been wounded at the Trident fighting for Aegon. True, both of us had failed to protect our Targaryen charges, but perhaps that's what Robert liked most about us. When my father presented Robert with the bodies of Rhaegar's wife and 2 children, Ned Stark hiked up his skirts and demanded Robert send their killer to Dorne and me to the Wall. But I saw what Ned couldn't. Born children. Ned Stark. When my father presented Robert with the bodies of Rhaegar's wife and 2 children,
Okay.
Ned Stark hiked up his skirts and demanded Robert send their killer to Dorne and me to the wall. But I saw what Ned couldn't. Robert was ashamed of the bodies, and more ashamed of his relief. He knew that Rhaegar's heirs had to die or his throne would never be safe. But glorious heroes didn't kill children. They simply didn't punish their murderers.
No doubt I would have suffered a similar fate. But my father had wisely sent me and my pregnant mother to Dragonstone. When the usurper heroically sent men to kill me and my newborn sister to protect his stolen throne, a loyal knight smuggled us across the narrow sea to Essos. And so the last dragons of Valyria, heirs to the greatest dynasty from the greatest civilization this world has ever known, slept in sewers and foraged for scraps in alleyways, one step ahead of the usurper's knives, and one step behind the whispers of his spy master, Varys. But we won't run forever. One day I'll return to my kingdoms with an army, take back my throne, and repay all traitors.
It will never be your throne, brother.
Fire and blood.
And they gonna do this grand music at the end. Oh shit. Yeah, this is the video that I watched right here. And then I had watched another one. But yeah, man. So it should probably be the last couple episodes. I think either the bells is next or the bells just happen. So just know when we get to the finale, I know one moment specifically, but if there's ever a moment of relief, it's literally because I'm just like, well, after the bells, it has to be, like, I didn't expect the bells to be the worst. I just expected the bells to be the beginning of, not the beginning of the end, but like, the beginning of the worst. You know what I'm saying? But, yeah, allergies going crazy, dude. But, let me know what y'all think in the comments down below. If you liked the video, make sure you drop a like, subscribe, share with your friends. Stay tuned for the next one. It's been Direction by the World's Coolest Nerd, and I'm out. Peace.